Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
So today I'm going to talk about a few different things, but really it centers on how different perspectives can help us. So I saw a sad news story, not too long ago. There's a lot of sad news stories, of course, and this is might seem like a small one when we compare it to other things, but every sad story is big for someone, right? So this young woman, she got what is called charged lemonade, and that is lemonade with an incredibly high caffeine content, like higher than several Red Bulls. And she drank this and she died. So that's a very sad story. Nobody thinks when you drink lemonade that you're going to die, right? And she was only 21 years old. So it's a real tragedy. Like the older I get, the more 21 seems like a kid, basically, to me. And so I'm telling you that my first response to that was a good response. I thought, oh, that poor family, I'm very sad for them. But then I had an unskillful response. That was my second response that I'm going to share with you now. I thought to myself, and I said this to my wife, I said, oh, it's so powerful it killed someone. I kind of want to try it. And that's not a good response to that at all, right? But my wife wisely says to me, Daniel, don't you have a heart condition? And then I thought, oh, right, I should not try the lemonade, right? And that perspective really helped me realize how foolish I was to even entertain that thought that I should try a deadly beverage. But you hear the statistics sometimes that married men live longer than unmarried men. And I don't know if that's universally true. I haven't looked into it, but I think of stuff like having that idea, oh, I want to try the lemonade. And then my wife tells me, hey, remember, you probably shouldn't, right? So that is how I think about perspectives, about having a partner with a perspective in my life. But also this is a big story about how fleeting life is. Death can come at any moment, right? You could drink lemonade and you could die. You could get hit by a car and you could die. Nothing is promised. And we tend to forget that kind of because we want to. We don't want to think about death that much. And the older we get, maybe the more like it's in our minds a little bit more. The older we get, the more we see what life is like. But I'm going to pivot now and give you a little history lesson. Bet you didn't think you were getting that today, but there's a historical figure that I think of as far as having a different perspective, and that being helpful and useful. And this is a student of the Buddha whose name was Ananda, and he was not only the Buddha's assistant, but he was also the Buddha's cousin. So he was around all the time. And because he was the Buddha's relative, I think he could see him as a person, which, and we see this even outside of spirituality. When somebody gets to where a lot of people are asking for their attention and like they're really respected, they can be put on a pedestal and then people can forget they're a person, right? That can happen. So I assume that happened to the Buddha, and some of his followers maybe didn't see him as a person. And that's going to be important in one of the stories I tell about Ananda. But first, I want to tell you, I imagine him as kind of a character because he is always depicted smiling. And one of the things that gets said about him is that he did not attain enlightenment until after the Buddha was dead. So although he didn't attain enlightenment until after the Buddha was dead, it's also said that he had a perfect memory. So this guy is around the Buddha all the time, and he's hearing what the Buddha says all the time. So in this time and place, they were not writing the teachings. They were all counting on remembering what the Buddha said. And so when some monks would like have a discussion, they would be like, what did the Buddha say? I don't remember. They could go to Ananda because he just remembered it. And so that can sort of remind us, like, you can have all the knowledge and still not be enlightened. You can have all the knowledge and still not have 100% of the wisdom. And you can even like give really good advice and say really smart things and still not be all the way there. So Ananda is credited as the person who convinced the Buddha that women should be able to become Buddhist nuns. So the Buddha had established what bhikkhus, which we call monks. He had established this teaching, but it was men only. And in that time and place, it's sort of a surprise that people even asked, can women do this? Because in that time and place, that was not something that would even occur to people, really, that women could fully participate. Sadly, right? But the Buddha's stepmother, she wanted to become a bhikkhu. She wanted to be ordained and, wear the robes and do the whole thing. And the Buddha told her no. The Buddha told her no. And so at this point, the Buddha's assistant, his cousin Ananda, he goes to the Buddha and he says, hey, are women equally able to attain enlightenment as men? And the Buddha says, yes. So then Ananda says, well, why can't they ordain then? Why can't they? And that was all the Buddha needed to hear. And that is when the bhikkhuni, or the nun order, started. It started with the Buddha's stepmother because Ananda just broke through and made the Buddha realize, oh yeah, women can do this. Of course they can. And so Ananda's perspective was very important. And it was also important that he felt brave enough to bring that to the Buddha, to go to someone who maybe people don't question his decisions very much. And Ananda did. And it reminds us that the Buddha was a person like you and me. And that's important because it means we can feel empowered to do this path like he did. It doesn't have to be so daunting because he wasn't some kind of spirit magical being. He was a person. So we can do what he did. And so a second story about Ananda is on the Buddha's deathbed. The Buddha, after teaching for 45 years, he had eaten some food that was spoiled, and he, at least allegedly that's the reason, but he knew he was going to die for several days, and everybody knew he was going to die, and it was very sad. And Ananda was by his side. And so Ananda had this opportunity that no one else had, to one last time to receive a teaching from the Buddha. One opportunity to ask him anything, okay? And so the story that people know, that everybody knows, is that the Buddha said he was not going to name a successor. He told the community, he said, you should be lights unto yourselves and strive forth with diligence. And that's a famous Buddha quote. People know that one. But maybe people don't know, Ananda asked the Buddha, he said, hey, these ethical teachings, the Buddha had given hundreds of ethical teachings because every time someone would ask him a question, that would become a teaching. So they would go ask him, yeah, I can't lie, but can I leave something out important when I'm talking to someone? And the Buddha was like, no, that counts as dishonesty. So, and like, even these monks took a vow of celibacy, and monks would go to the Buddha and they would be like, hey, does it count if we go to bed with each other though? Does that count? And as breaking our celibacy? And the Buddha was like, yeah, it does. It still counts. So there are hundreds of ethical teachings because they were written that way. So Ananda asks the Buddha on his deathbed, he says, hey, are all the ethical teachings important? Are all of them really important to really stick with? And the Buddha said, well, you need to really make sure you follow the really important ones. But some of the lesser ones, you can let those slide a little bit. And the Buddha said this, and then he died. So Ananda with his unique perspective, did not ask, and he was chastised later on for not asking the obvious question, which ones are the minor ones? He didn't ask. So the Buddha just said, yeah, some of the teachings are minor ones, and we're not going to know. So that sort of speaks to his different perspective. He was probably too sad though, right? His cousin, his best friend, was dying. So, but one more final story I'm going to tell you about Ananda, and that is this. Ananda went to the Buddha one day. So this is obviously before the Buddha died. And he went to him and he said, hey, this is my favorite story. He says, hey, I think spiritual friendship, I think having a community is so important. Buddha, I think it's so important that it's half of the spiritual life. I think it's half of the spiritual life. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, spiritual friendship is the whole way. It's the whole holy life. Is community, coming together, spiritual friendship. So with that being said, I want to thank you for being here and engaging spiritual friendship with us. And have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Brand Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.